Hello, for our video today, we are discussing the events that took place after Archduke Ferdinand has been assassinated. The Germans have moved and they're at the Belgian border, and we're going to look at and take place of what is going on here with all of this. What are the ramifications of what is going to happen? And basically, what it's talking about today in this video is Germany's invasion and occupation of the small country of Belgium and what they had to do in there. What did the Belgians do? What was their reaction? What did the Germans do? And then what are some of the consequences of this action of invading Belgium? Now, a little bit different of a scene today. I have the whiteboard behind me so that I was able to draw some maps and different things there to help you guys be able to visualize and picture what is going on here. Now, we have a timeline that we're looking at. In the middle of June is when Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated. He was assassinated by a Serbian rebel and Austria-Hungary. He was the Archduke. That means he was the crown prince. He was the next in line to be in charge of the Austria-Hungarian Empire. Well, obviously Austria was angry at this, wanted Serbia to pay. Serbia wouldn't do it and couldn't do it. And so Germany goes and sides with Austria-Hungary against Serbia. Russia joins with Serbia. France joins with Serbia. And all these things are happening very quickly. And so what we see up here is on July 24th, at that place with what's taking there, militaries are starting to mobilize their armies. Now, Germany had a plan. They had what is called the Schlieffen Plan. Now, there's some historians out there that will tell you that there was no Schlieffen Plan, there wasn't really what was going on, but we're just going to go with the most commonly accepted thing here is the Schlieffen Plan. And what the Schlieffen Plan was is that Germany was going to go and knock out France and then turn around and hit a knockout blow to Russia. Because Germany had a big problem here. As you can see, now this map is not to scale, but any way, stretch, or form. But what we see here is that Germany on the continent of Europe was stuck in the middle. France and Russia, because of some things that Germany had done, had made an alliance back in the late 1800s. And because of that, Germany realized very early on that if there's a war amongst the major powers of Europe, Germany is going to be stuck in the middle between these two countries. And that's a problem because they'd be fighting on what is called two fronts. The fronts are where the main battle lines of the two armies are at. And Germany would have to face one on their western border and one on their eastern border. One against France, one against Russia. And so Germany had been coming up with this plan for a long time. It was made by a man, last name is Schlieffen, who would go through, and this is the plan. They would quickly go through, knock out France, destroy France's military ability. And when I say quickly, I mean like within 2 weeks they would have this plan. And they looked at Russia and said, Russia's a big deal. Russia's a big problem. But the problem, the good thing is with their problem is that they're slow. They're not well organized. They're going to take a long time to get going. So Germany would have enough time to get its military together, crush all the resistance, all the military strength in France, then turn around and destroy Russia as they started coming. The problem was that if they slowed down, if this plan did not work exactly like the timetable said, Germany would get stopped when they're invading France. Russia would be able to invade, and Berlin, the capital of Germany, would be under the control of the Russian forces. Doesn't matter how well you do destroying the French, if your capital is taken back in this time period, you're done with. You had no ability to keep on fighting. So they had to do this quickly. But there was another situation. France and Germany, for hundreds of years, really almost thousands of years, have been historical enemies. All the way back at the time when the Celts and the Germanic tribes lived there at the time of the Romans. They had enemies there. And if France wanted to expand, it either go south into Spain, but there's a large mountain range called the Pyrenees that was in the way, or they would go east and north into Germany. Well, it was much easier to go this way, so they would always fight there. And so France had been preparing for this, and they had set up certain military posts and military forts and different things here along the border between France and Germany. Well, France had not set up forts up here between the country of France and Belgium. Because Belgium was a very small country, relatively weak, relatively unknown in the world there, and they knew and understood that if we go to war with any of these powers, and we are as ready as we possibly can, they'll get destroyed. So during most major conflicts that took place on the continent, they would remain neutral, saying, guys, you have your war, you have your fight, we're not going to get involved. And it worked out pretty well. But when World War I was breaking out, Germany saw an opportunity. They saw that they could either attack the main French lines directly here, or they could go and attack through Belgium, take that small neutral country, wouldn't offer much resistance, not much of a fight, and then go into France and attack from the northern part of France, where they were relatively unprotected. But there was a problem. I think I said this last video, but at the beginning of World War I, there were no good guys or bad guys. That's one thing I want you to keep in mind during this conflict. We often look at the Germans during World War I as the bad guys because during World War II, there was no doubt whatsoever that they were the bad guys. What Nazi Germany did and what Hitler did and the Third Reich was just atrocious and terrible and horrible and wicked. They were the bad guys, enemies of humanity. In World War I, it wasn't like that. Germany was doing nothing that no other country had ever done, or was doing nothing that they hadn't done before. They were defending their alliance, and they realized that if we get attacked first, we're going to lose, so we will be the ones to do the attacking. And so that's what their plan was. That's what their Schlieffen plans. For decades, they've been building this plan. And the plan was to invade through Belgium, because they wouldn't offer much resistance, and then go into France. Well, what about Belgium's perspective? Belgium, like I said, was a small country, and they knew that if they were to offer much resistance or actually like side in a war, they would be pretty well destroyed. So what they did was they would set up and make themselves neutral, but they did have groups of forts. They had 6 major forts along the border between themselves and Germany. And then between those, they had 6 other small forts that were there. And between those forts, they would have trenches or lines where their forces would be able to go there. Now, the thing is, these forts, when I say a fort, we think of maybe a pillow fort or something from the Civil War, like Fort Sumter, or different things like that. These forts were top of the line when they were built. In the 1880s, little more than 30, about 25, 30 years before World War I broke out, in the 1880s, Belgium commissioned this group to come together, this construction group, this company basically, to build them some military forts that would go up and withstand anything that was there and that was available to fight. The cannons that were available in the 1880s, these forts would easily destroy and would not be knocked out at all. Most of the cannons that were available in the 1880s, though, were guns that Napoleon had used at the beginning of the 1800s, were the same type of guns used in the Civil War. And these guns actually were called Napoleons. Now, to give you a little bit of numbers here, they shot between, generally, the cannonball was between 9 and 12 pounds, was the size of the cannonball these cannons would shoot. These were the size of the cannonballs these forts were designed to stand against, to be protected against. 9 to 12 pound cannonballs. The cannons themselves weighed roughly 1,200 pounds. Okay, so, I mean, those are pretty hefty there. You have to pull them with a team of horses. You'd have about 9 to 12 guys that would be used to operate these cannons. And so that's what these forts were built to stand against. And these forts, if they were fought with those type of cannons, would stand really forever. Now, these weren't just like forts and they built all these beautiful fortifications up top. These were basically castles that would have a couple of places above ground, but most of the stuff was beneath. There were barracks where men were able to sleep. There were train tracks, basically, and if not train tracks, then tunnels that connected these different areas. Little trolley cars that you could transport men and material and guns and weapons and ammunition from place to place. These were incredible forts that were built there. Well, on August 2nd of 1914, Germany sends a letter to Belgium. And they say, Belgium, here's what we're going to do. What we want you to do is just stay out of the way. We're going to come through your country. We will not harass you. We will not bother you. And the only thing we want to do is use your road systems. We want to use your road systems to get through because we are going to invade France. If you let us do that, then we'll be good to go. That's all we want to do. Well, Belgium sits there and they think about it. But they don't think about it for very long. And they say, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let you just walk through our country, use it as a hallway to get to France. So part of the conditions there were also, they said, fine, we're coming through, but do not. Germany's coming through Belgium. But Belgium, you better not destroy any of the road systems. Don't destroy any of the bridges. Leave the tunnels alone. Just let us come through. We understand? This happens. So they declare war on Belgium. Now, again, Belgium was a neutral territory, neutral country. So you have to declare war on them before you just go blatantly invade, because that's a big no-no. You can't do that. Well, here's the problem. Germany was weighing its options. And like I said, there was no good guys or bad guys, really, at the beginning of this war. What would take place here is that Belgium, in order to remain neutral, they had to remain neutral, and it's like being in a fight and saying, well, I'm just not going to fight anybody. But the big guy, the one that's doing the attack says, well, I don't care, I'm going to attack you anyway. Well, standing behind Belgium was the British Empire, really at the peak of its strength at this point. Really, really powerful empire. And it looked at all the other countries on the continent of Europe and said, listen, if you mess with Belgium, you mess with us. And so this is what Germany had to weigh its options. Do we go through and do we attack here, the fortified line between France and Germany, or do we attack this relatively unfortified line between Belgium and Germany and then go through the north of France there? What do we do? And knowing that if they attack Belgium, then Great Britain is going to get involved on Belgium's side. Britain did not want to get involved in this war. They did not want to get involved in a land war in Europe. They didn't really have a very big land army. They had a navy. That's what they were known for. They controlled the seas. They couldn't control the continent as well. So the decision was made by the German counselors and chancellor to invade Belgium. And they do. August 4th, they invade Belgium. Britain declares war on Germany. Well, when Germany goes through, there are reports of what took place here. And I'll actually find the letter that was written. It was a journal entry by a gentleman that saw this coming. The German army during this part was magnificent. It was stylistic, and it was refined, and it was precise. And they marched past this one Belgian city where this reporter was, who was writing in his journal, and for 24 hours straight, the German army marched through this city with their infantry, with their military vehicles, with supply, all this stuff just kept marching through. And it blew the people away. But when they show up further into Belgium, the German military commanders realized something. Belgium was not going to let them come through easily. Belgium had destroyed bridges. They had blown up tunnels. They had ripped up and destroyed railroad lines. They said, listen, if we're going to war with you, Germany, we're not going to make it easy on you. And so Germany gets furious. Remember, they're on the Schlieffen Plan. They're on a tight schedule. They got to get through here. But not just that, but they have this difficulty of getting through there, but then they have these forts that they have to deal with as well. So they go through, and whereas most of the other nations were scrambling to mobilize their military, mobilize their army, Germany was ready to go. They had been, again, planning this Schlieffen Plan, this idea, for decades of how they would destroy France and then Russia by going through Belgium. Well, let me show you a few numbers here. The military, the army that Germany was going to use to go through the Belgian-controlled territory was 750,000 men. Now, that's a big number. All right, that's a lot of people. But it's kind of hard to comprehend. So let me put it this way. The largest sports stadium in the United States will seat 107,601 people. The largest stadium in the world will hold 150,000 people. So that means that the German army marching through Belgium, coming to the northern part of France, is made up of more than three of the largest stadiums in the world. And Germany had them supplied, they had them clothed, they had their weapons, and they were going through and marching through Belgium. Well, they show up to these forts. Germany has to get through them. They have to get through them quickly. Remember, they're on a tight schedule here. Well, they had been training this particular group of soldiers, it's like shock troopers. Basically, their job was to go in, and they've been training for years, knowing that they would go through and have to destroy these Belgian forts. And there were 30,000 of them, 30,000 of these soldiers that would go through there. But this war is when 18th century warfare meets 19th century or modern technology. This is the war that shows that the machine controls the battlefield. Now, granted, humans, mankind, still control the machines. But whoever has the most powerful machines or the most of the machines will probably win. And I'm talking guns, weaponry, artillery, uh, vehicles, different things there. Whoever controls those, that's who's going to win. And Belgium in their forts had over 400 guns separating amongst these different forts, whether large artillery pieces or machine guns, 400 of them spread out amongst 12 forts. And so when the German shock troopers come on two of these forts, they just charge right in. Remember, they have this idea of this glorious romantic battlefield that they're going to charge in to glory for the fatherland to do this, and they get demolished. They get mowed down by the Belgian machine guns and Belgian artillery. Just it's as if you had set pencils up on a table and they were all balanced, standing up like this, and then you came through and just went and all just mowed down. So much that the pile of bodies, they said, was over 3 feet tall that was there. It actually became a problem for the Belgians because they were doing such a good job destroying all of the German soldiers that the pile of German bodies were giving the other German soldiers something to hide behind to be able to attack with. And so there are generals and people who wrote in their journals that would say, we didn't know whether to just shoot and make holes in these piles of bodies or send people out to tear the bodies down so that we could fire at them. They didn't know what to do with this. This was totally new. And this is a lesson that would be taught over and over again that we'll see in World War I. Well, eventually the Germans realized we are not going to be able to destroy these forts simply by throwing men against the walls. That's what these forts were built for, was to destroy waves and waves of soldiers. Well, as I mentioned, these forts were built back in the 1880s, 25 years before this. And actually, more than 30, about 35 years before this. And the forts were made to defend against Napoleon-style cannons. Well, unknown to anybody in the world except for the Germans was that Germany had completely changed the game when it came to the size of the cannons and the artillery. As I mentioned before, Germany, when they're coming through Belgium, has to destroy these forts. Well, now that they're doing that, they bring these cannons from Berlin, from the main factories that are building these. The largest of these guns had to be disassembled in Germany, transported to Belgium, and then put back together. Now, when I say put back together, these guns that were coming from Germany, the biggest of them, weighed 300,000 pounds. That's how much the gun weighed. The one that I mentioned to you about Napoleon's gun, 1,200 is how much the gun weighed. Napoleon's gun would fire a 9 to 12 pound cannonball. The shell, not a cannonball, the shell, and the shell is different. The shell can be used to put like timers on, or you can put stuff in it like shrapnel or poison gas. The shell that Germany would use against the Belgian force would weigh 2,000 pounds. The entire Napoleon's cannon could be melted down, turned into a shell, and fired out of it, out of these new guns. These guns were so big that when they were fired, you put it all together, and you had to like lay concrete, let it set, and assemble this gun. You would then have to be standing 3 football fields away, 4 football fields away, and fire it electronically, like with a wire, like a little boop kind of thing. And then they also had to put cotton in their ears, up their nostrils and cover their eyes, and then have their mouths open because the concussion, the wave from the gun, that if they had their mouth closed during this, it would explode their eardrums because of the pressure that would smash against their bodies that was there. It took 60 seconds, all right, when the gun, if this was the fort, the gun is way back here, okay? Now, the gun from Napoleon's time, that one could fire about 2,000 yards, 2 kilometers. About a mile and a half, give or take. The ones that Berlin had just sent forward could fire 14,000 yards, almost 5 miles. That's a long way. That is a very long way. And so the gun would be back here, and it would be fired. It would take 60 seconds for it to come down and go into the fort. 60 seconds. 4,000 foot arc. It would go up, and when it was at its peak, from here to the ground was 4,000 feet, and it would come down. But these weren't just cannons, these were shells, remember. All right, so if these are shells that are being used, if this is the fort that's being fired upon, the shell would pierce the top of the fort, go to its max depth, and then it would explode. There. Explode from the inside of the fort, just demolishing it. And these forts quickly fell, one after another. Within a couple of days, Belgium was completely under the control of the German army. And now we see that Germany has done the first major attack of the war. Next video, we're going to look at and see what the Russian response of this is, what is France's response, and also what is Great Britain going to do with what is taking place here now that Belgium is under the control of the German army. Have a good day.